What's up, everybody? Welcome to the future, which has now become the present. My name is bytes and my real name is Torbjørn Bam. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Bitcoin Core 30. So Bitcoin Core 30 is the latest version of the Bitcoin Core software. So if you don't know what the Bitcoin software is, basically, when you're running a Bitcoin node, you're using some kind of node implementation which has the Bitcoin protocol. And how a node works is that it downloads all the previous blocks, basically from the Genesis block back in 2009 all up until today. Another thing a node does is that it relays transactions using something called the mempool. So the mempool is a temporary storage on the node itself. It's not on the blockchain. It's temporary storage that each node holds of the different transactions and then broadcast those transactions to other nodes in the network. So then get them in the mempool, and then a miner at some point picks up those transactions and put them in a block. So now you shortly know very briefly how Bitcoin node works and how the mempool works. So Bitcoin Core 30 changes the way that transactions work. What they basically have changed is something called the op return. Now, the op return is a field for arbitrary data, which is not the normal transaction data. So that could be any kind of data that somebody would want to include with that transaction. Currently, before Bitcoin Core 30, that was limited to 83 bytes. That was introduced back in 2014, the 83 bytes op return. And now with the new Bitcoin Core 30 version, they have changed that so the op return now can hold 100,000 bytes. I believe it is. So basically, they have introduced the possibility for a lot more arbitrary data. Now, that has sparked a debate within the Bitcoin community, where you basically on one side have the people who say, well, that's because Bitcoin is basically just a kind of eternity chain where you can store any kind of data, and the block space is basically whatever people are willing to pay that can be included in a block. So not just the Bitcoin transactions, it could also be any kind of arbitrary data somebody would want to have on Bitcoin. Then on the other side, you have the Bitcoin Knots guys, that's KNOTS, which are saying that we shouldn't increase the op return because Bitcoin is a monetary system and not just a block storage system for storing arbitrary data. They also fear, some of them at least, that this op return increase could result in somebody including nasty stuff in a block. And since the Bitcoin block holds all transactions and all previous blocks, that means if something nasty gets included in a Bitcoin block, then that stays in the Bitcoin blockchain forever. So that's, of course, a concern to this other camp. Now, this has sparked a lot of debate. You have seen Michael Saylor basically saying, don't change Bitcoin, which means like, don't change the op return. You have seen the CEO of Binance, I can't remember his name right now, I'm sorry, but also saying like that you shouldn't change Bitcoin and stuff. Again, showing support for that we shouldn't change the op return limit. But what has happened now is that the Bitcoin Core 30 software has been released, which means that the op return is now increased. And of course, the debate is still going on between these two camps because there's still not consensus on whether or not this is a good or bad change. So it's kind of interesting and kind of sad to see that the Bitcoin Core people have just basically pushed through an update which there's not completely consensus for. Normally, you would want to have a majority consensus, and it doesn't seem that way that there's a majority consensus. Now, of course, people can just choose not to run the new Bitcoin software, but if somebody runs it and somebody mines a block with the new data, and especially if somebody has a block with some nasty data, not saying you couldn't include nasty data in 83 bytes op return, but it's a bit harder. It's basically just sad to see that the update has been pushed through because it really seems like there's not consensus. Now, my belief is that when you make a non-monetary change to Bitcoin, you should have consensus. And I think Nick Satabo put it well. He said that this is the first non-monetary change to Bitcoin, basically allowing for non-monetary data to be stored on Bitcoin. So yeah, is this a good change? Is this a bad change? Well, let me know, but it's definitely a very controversial change. Of course, I do think that some op return is needed, like the 83 byte limits is good. That allows something like a deep pouch, a cross-chain DEX, which I'm a co-founder of. You can trade to and from Bitcoin, and we use that upreturn field for a memo, basically telling liquidity routes where the money should be sent and all that kind of stuff. So like we're using the upreturn field a lot. But I just wanted to brief you guys on this issue because it's important that you as a Bitcoiner know. And of course, you can take a stance. If you run a Bitcoin node, you can either run Bitcoin nuts, or you can run a Bitcoin Core 30 if you support it, or you can run a Bitcoin Core node before Bitcoin 30. And of course, the less people that run Bitcoin 30 and above nodes, unless they reverse this change, of course, show either that they approve or disapprove of this. But in the end, it's the miners who decides what gets included to a block. Of course, Bitcoin nodes are needed to relay the transactions, but in the end, it's the miners that decides what goes into a block. So yeah, that's just a short video explaining this situation. And yeah, thanks for watching this video. If you have any questions, and also let me know, like, how do you feel about this change? Do you feel like it should have been pushed through? Do you think that they should have waited? Do you think, like, what do you think about it? Let me know down in the comments below. And also make sure to like, follow, and subscribe. Check out my links down below. Check out Deepouch, my decentralized cross-chain exchange, where you can trade Bitcoin to Ethereum to all kinds of other cryptocurrencies with no KYC because it's a decentralized exchange. So check it out, and take care, and I'll see you guys in the future. Take care.